She was forced to marry her sister's millionaire fiancé in a coma, but he woke up calling her name. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us get back to our main character. The soft hum of the hospital machines filled the sterile room. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and roses from a forgotten vase on the side table. Claire Bennett, 26, stood frozen beside the hospital bed, her hands trembling around a pen. Lying motionless before her was Ethan Montgomery, the man she was about to marry. His dark hair framed a pale face that looked carved from marble, peaceful yet haunting in its stillness. The monitor beside him blinked with rhythmic precision, a reminder that he was still alive, but barely. "Claire," her father's voice broke the silence, cold and businesslike. "We cannot let the Montgomery family withdraw the engagement now. Do you understand what that would do to us?" Her throat tightened. "But he is in a coma, Dad. He does not even know." "Exactly. That is why this must happen quietly. His family needs the ceremony for legal purposes. You will sign. You will marry him, in name only, until further notice." A document slid across the small table toward her. The letters blurred through the tears burning in her eyes. Marriage by proxy. Her own reflection stared back from the silver pen her father handed her, small, fragile, terrified. Her sister Lila, Ethan's real fiancée, had been in a car crash 2 weeks ago. She was still in critical condition in another hospital wing, while Ethan had slipped into a coma the same night after the same accident. Both families had buried the truth beneath money and reputation. The deal was simple. If the Montgomery name was tied to the Bennetts through marriage, the financial scandal from their failed investment would disappear. Claire bit her lip until she tasted blood. "You are asking me to marry my sister's fiancé." Her father did not flinch. "I am asking you to save your family." For a long moment, the only sound in the room was the steady beep of the heart monitor. Then, with a shaky breath, Claire signed her name. The pen clattered against the glass surface as tears splashed over her signature. Later that afternoon, the hospital chapel was empty except for the 2 witnesses, a lawyer, and the faint hum of fluorescent lights. Claire stood in a simple ivory dress borrowed from her cousin, her hair pulled back in trembling hands. The priest's voice echoed softly. "Do you, Claire Bennett, take Ethan Montgomery to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Her gaze flickered to the motionless figure in the wheelchair beside her, the man who would never answer. I do." When it was over, the lawyer handed her a ring, large and cold, clearly not made for her hand. It slipped halfway down her finger before stopping awkwardly. That tiny imperfection, too loose, too foreign, seared into her memory like a mark of guilt. Outside, rain began to fall, tapping against the tall windows of the chapel. The lawyer signed the final page and said quietly, "Congratulations, Mrs. Montgomery." The words hit her like a verdict. She walked alone down the corridor, heels echoing on the polished floor, the scent of rain mingling with the faint odor of disinfectant. Her reflection trailed beside her in the glass walls, a bride without a groom, a promise without a heartbeat. As she entered Ethan's private room again, the storm outside deepened. The monitors cast a pale blue glow across his face. She took a hesitant step closer, her voice barely a whisper. "I do not know if you can hear me, Ethan, but they said I have to be your wife now. I do not even know you, but I will do my best." Maybe that is what love looks like for people like us, quiet, messy, and full of things left unsaid. Her words hung in the air, trembling between life and silence. She reached out and gently adjusted the blanket over him. For a second, she thought she saw his fingers twitch, but when she blinked, there was nothing, only the soft rhythm of machines and the sound of her own breath breaking in the dark. That night, as lightning cracked across the city skyline, Claire sat beside the bed, still wearing the ill-fitting ring. Somewhere deep inside, she wished for one impossible miracle, that the man she had been forced to marry would wake up and remember her name. The rain outside the hospital had not stopped for 2 days. Every window pane shimmered with water, reflecting the gray clouds hanging low over the city. Inside, Claire moved quietly through the hallways, her soft steps echoing between the walls of polished tile. Nurses passed her with sympathetic glances. They had already heard the story, the young woman who had married a man in a coma for reasons no one dared to ask about. Each morning, Claire began her routine. She stopped by the small chapel, where the smell of candles lingered, whispered a few words she was not even sure were prayers, and then walked to Ethan's private suite. The door always creaked slightly before she pushed it open. The sound had become familiar, almost comforting. The machines hummed steadily beside him. His face looked peaceful, untouched by time, as if the outside world no longer mattered. Claire set a vase of fresh flowers on the table, white lilies, the kind he had once sent to her sister. It hurt to look at them, but she could not bring herself to choose any other kind. "Good morning, Ethan," she said softly, her voice trembling but steady enough to fill the quiet room. "It is me again. Your wife, I guess." She smiled faintly, though the words still felt foreign on her tongue. She began adjusting the blanket around him, tucking it carefully beneath his arm. The nurse who came to check his vitals nodded approvingly. "He is lucky to have someone like you here every day," she said kindly. Claire only replied with a quiet, "Thank you." She did not have the heart to explain that luck had nothing to do with it. It was obligation, cold, heavy, necessary. Yet, as the days turned into weeks, something inside her began to shift. The silence no longer felt unbearable. She started talking to Ethan as if he were listening about her day, about the weather, about her sister Lila's slow recovery. The doctors had said Lila might never wake up completely, but Claire still visited her too, holding her hand, pretending the world was not collapsing around them. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, casting the room in soft orange light, Claire sat near the window sketching. Her mother used to say that drawing helped her think, and the habit had returned naturally. She glanced up at Ethan's still face and murmured, "I used to draw sunsets when I was a kid. I never thought I would watch them alone every night." A gentle beeping interrupted her thoughts. She looked at the monitor. Everything was normal, yet her heart had skipped a beat. She leaned forward, staring at his hand. She could have sworn his finger twitched. "Ethan?" she whispered. No answer. The stillness returned, mocking her hope. She let out a shaky breath. "I must be seeing things." Later that night, her father called. His voice came through the phone, sharp and impatient. "Have you spoken to the Montgomerys? Their legal team needs your confirmation for the quarterly transfer." "I am not interested in their money," she said quietly. "It is not about interest," he replied coldly. "It is about survival. Do not forget why you are there." After the call ended, Claire sat in silence. The weight of her father's words pressed against her chest like a stone. She turned toward Ethan again. "They all see you as a transaction," she said softly. "But I do not. I cannot." Days passed. She began spending longer hours in his room, sometimes falling asleep in the chair beside him. The nurses started leaving her small comforts, a blanket, a cup of tea, a note that said, "Keep faith." And one night, as thunder rumbled far away, she read aloud from one of his old books that she had found in the cabinet. The cover was faded, the corners bent. Inside, a note was written in firm handwriting, "To Ethan, never let the noise of the world drown the quiet truth inside you." Claire traced the words with her finger and smiled sadly. "You must have been someone who believed in truth," she said softly. "Maybe that is why I cannot lie to you, even like this." She reached for his hand, cold but steady beneath her touch. "You do not know me, Ethan, but I am trying to be someone you would not be ashamed of, someone who keeps promises." A faint hum filled the room as the rain outside softened to a drizzle. The clock ticked past midnight. Claire's eyelids grew heavy. She leaned her head against the side of the bed, her hand still holding his. For a moment she thought she felt a pulse move beneath her fingertips. Subtle, real, alive. Her eyes opened wide, but the monitors remained steady, unchanged. Maybe it was her imagination. Maybe not. Either way, she whispered into the silence. "If you can hear me, Ethan, please wake up. I need to know that all of this means something." Outside, the storm broke completely, and the city lights reflected on the wet glass like distant stars. Claire closed her eyes, unaware that Ethan's hand twitched once more beneath hers, slight, fleeting, but enough to change everything that would come next. Morning light filtered through the hospital blinds, turning the room a pale gold. Claire woke with a start, realizing she had fallen asleep again in the chair beside Ethan's bed. Her neck ached, her hand still resting over his. The faint warmth under her fingers startled her. For one dizzying moment, she thought she had imagined the movement from the night before. But no, there it was again, a tiny flex, a pulse against her palm. She sat upright, heart pounding. "Ethan?" she whispered. His eyelids did not move, his chest rose and fell in the same steady rhythm, but something had changed. She could feel it. The nurse entered just then, checking the machines with practiced calm. Claire's voice trembled. "He moved. I think he did." The nurse gave a gentle smile. "Sometimes the muscles twitch, dear. It does not always mean what we hope." Claire nodded, but inside she was certain. Hope, fragile as glass, had begun to stir in her chest again. Later that day, she was summoned to the hospital's administrative office. The polished wood desk, the scent of old paper, and the presence of 2 lawyers waiting for her made her uneasy. The older man adjusted his glasses and spoke first. "Mrs. Montgomery, your father and the Montgomery family have finalized the terms of the ongoing arrangement. We need your signature for the continuation of the marital contract and financial management." Claire blinked. Continuation? The marriage already happened. The younger lawyer smiled politely. "Yes, but since Mr. Montgomery remains incapacitated, you are required to sign an addendum confirming that you will act as his representative in public affairs under specific conditions." He slid the paper across the table. Claire scanned the words. There were clauses about confidentiality, the handling of assets, and a strict rule forbidding her from discussing the nature of the marriage with anyone. At the bottom, bold letters read, "Violation of these terms will result in immediate annulment and forfeiture of all legal protection." Her stomach turned. "So I am his wife in name, but his shadow in life?" "That would be an accurate way to describe it," the man said smoothly. She stared at the pen. It was the same kind her father had used the day she first signed away her freedom. For a moment, her hand hovered over the paper. Then she remembered Ethan's still face, the faint twitch of his hand. Something deep inside whispered that she needed to stay close, that he was not gone. She signed, pressing harder than she meant to. The ink bled slightly through the paper, like a silent protest. When she returned to the room, Ethan's doctor was there. Dr. Harris was a calm, middle-aged man with tired eyes. "Mrs. Montgomery," he said, "we have noticed minor neural responses during routine scans. Nothing significant yet, but the brain shows signs of activity. That is good news." Her heart leapt. "So he might wake up?" "It is possible, but do not expect miracles overnight." She smiled faintly. "I already did that part." Days stretched into another week. Claire followed the rules of the contract. Meticulously, she met with the legal team, attended short press briefings, and always wore her wedding ring, even when she wanted to throw it away. Every time the cameras flashed, she felt like a liar playing a part in someone else's story. One afternoon, while she was arranging flowers in Ethan's room, his mother entered. The older woman's elegance was intimidating: pearls, sharp perfume, eyes like glass. "Claire," she said coolly, "you look exhausted. You should take a few days off. There are people who can handle this." "I prefer to stay," Claire replied quietly. The woman studied her. "You are very loyal, but remember, you are here because my son's reputation requires it. Do not confuse duty with love." Claire's voice trembled, but she held her ground. "You are right, but duty is still something worth keeping." When the older woman left, Claire sank into the chair beside the bed and whispered, "Did you hear that, Ethan? They think I am pretending. Maybe I am. Maybe I do not know what this is anymore." The next morning, the head nurse found her in the same chair, reading aloud to him from the same worn book. She had started doing that every night now, her voice soft but steady. Sometimes she would talk about the world outside, the rain, the cafeteria coffee, the nurse who hummed while mopping the floor. It was during one of these quiet moments that his fingers moved again. This time she saw it clearly, her breath caught, eyes wide. "Ethan, can you hear me?" No response. But the monitor flickered just once, then returned to normal. Tears filled her eyes. "I know you are in there," she said. "You are fighting your way back." Outside, the city's skyline glowed against the evening light. Claire leaned closer and whispered, "I signed another contract today. They think it will keep me quiet, but I am not here for them anymore. I am here for you." The words lingered in the room long after she stopped speaking. Somewhere inside the quiet body before her, a faint sound escaped: a breath, a sigh, almost too soft to be real. and though she did not hear it, the smallest flicker passed beneath his closed eyelids, as if a dream had shifted and found her voice inside it. The following week felt different. The quiet of Ethan's room was no longer heavy. It had softened, like a melody waiting for words. Claire noticed tiny changes each day, small, almost invisible, yet enough to keep her heart alive. His fingers no longer stayed still. His breathing sounded stronger. Once, when she adjusted his pillow, his head moved slightly toward her voice. Dr. Harris called it progress. "The brain is like a sleeping city," he said. "Lights come back on one by one." Those words stayed with her. She started reading to him more often, switching from medical reports to novels she found in the hospital library. Sometimes she would catch her reflection in the window and laugh quietly. "Look at me," she would whisper, "talking to a millionaire who cannot talk back." Her days began to follow a rhythm. She met with the hospital staff in the morning, signed legal updates in the afternoon, and returned to Ethan's side before sunset. The nurses had started calling her Mrs. Montgomery with real affection now, as if she had earned the name. One afternoon, a young hospital volunteer offered to help her water the flowers. "You must really love him," the girl said innocently. "No one else comes every day." Claire smiled gently. "Love is not the word I would use," she replied. "It is more like keeping a promise." The volunteer nodded, but her words echoed in Claire's mind long after. Love? She had not allowed herself to think about that. What started as duty had turned into something deeper, something she could not name. She found herself noticing things she had ignored before: the line of his jaw, the warmth of his skin when she changed the sheets, the calm that filled her whenever she was near him. That night, she decided to stay late. The storm had returned, rain streaking the windows, thunder rolling in the distance. She dimmed the lights and sat by his bed, her hand resting on his. "Do you remember what rain sounds like, Ethan?" she whispered. "You used to love driving in the rain. Lila told me that once." Her voice cracked on her sister's name. Guilt washed over her again, the secret she carried, the truth she had buried. She leaned closer, her tears falling onto the blanket. "I am sorry. I should not be here, but I cannot walk away." The machines hummed. For a second, she thought she heard a faint sound, like air moving through his throat. Then, unmistakably, his fingers tightened around hers. Claire froze. "Ethan?" Her pulse raced. His eyelids fluttered once, just barely. Dr. Harris rushed in moments later, alarms softly beeping as the monitors shifted. "He is responding," the doctor said, his voice calm but urgent. "Keep talking to him, Claire. He can hear you." She squeezed Ethan's hand, tears blurring her vision. "It is me, Claire," she whispered. "You are safe. Just come back. Please, come back." The storm raged outside, but in that small room, something had changed forever. The man she had married for duty was fighting his way back to life, guided by the sound of her voice. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan's condition continued to improve. The doctors called it a gradual awakening, but to Claire, it felt like watching sunlight push through a long winter. His eyes fluttered open more often now, though they never focused for long. He murmured sometimes small, scattered words that made no sense, yet sounded like fragments of a forgotten dream. Every morning, Claire arrived before sunrise. She would open the blinds, letting the first light fall across his bed, and speak softly, as if guiding him through the haze between worlds. "Good morning, Ethan," she would say. "It is another day. You are doing great." One afternoon, when the nurses left them alone, Ethan's voice broke the silence. It was rough and low, like an instrument unused for too long. "Who are you?" Claire froze. Her throat tightened, but she smiled through it. "I am Claire. I have been here every day. You are safe, Ethan." His brow furrowed slightly. "Claire." The sound of her name on his lips made her heart stumble. "Where is Lila?" The question hit her like cold water. She took a slow breath. "She is resting in another hospital," she said carefully. "You need to focus on getting better." He looked at her for a long moment, confusion and recognition flickering behind his eyes. Then exhaustion pulled him back into sleep. That night, Dr. Harris confirmed what she already knew. "His memory will come in fragments," he explained. "Do not force him. Just keep talking to him." Claire nodded, though part of her wished the fragments would stay scattered. She did not know what would happen once he remembered everything: the truth about the wedding, the contract, her sister. A few days later, Ethan's mother organized a small gathering in the hospital's private lounge. It was meant to be a celebration of progress, but the air felt heavy with judgment. Cameras flashed as reporters whispered, "The young wife who never left his side." When one journalist asked her how it felt to be the miracle behind the millionaire's recovery, Claire smiled politely. "I am just glad he is alive," she said. Another reporter sneered softly. "Do you think he will still want to stay married to you once he remembers everything?" The words stung, but she kept her composure. "That question does not matter right now," she answered quietly. "What matters is that he wakes up and lives." Later, when the room had emptied, Ethan's mother approached her. "You handled that well," she said, voice cool but measured. "You surprised me." Claire met her gaze. "I am not here to surprise anyone, Mrs. Montgomery. I am just here for him." Back in Ethan's room, she sat beside his bed once more. The lights were dim, the monitors steady. She took his hand gently. "They all have opinions," she whispered. "But only you and I know what it has been like." For the first time, his fingers moved with purpose, curling around hers. Slowly, his eyes opened clearer, focused. He looked at her, really looked at her, and said her name again, not as a question this time, but as a memory. "Claire." Her tears fell before she could stop them. He remembered her not as a stranger, not as a stand-in, but as the woman who had stayed. Ethan's recovery advanced faster than anyone expected. Within a week, he could sit up with help and speak in short sentences. The staff called him a miracle. For Claire, it felt like standing in a dream she was afraid to wake from. Every day, he asked more questions. Simple ones at first: what day it was, what had happened, why she was always there. Claire answered carefully, giving him pieces of truth without touching the one secret that could destroy everything. One afternoon, he looked at her across the room while she folded a blanket. "You never told me why you stayed," he said. His voice was steadier now, curious but soft. She hesitated. "Because someone had to." "That is not an answer," he replied gently. "You could have left." Claire placed the blanket aside and met his eyes. "Maybe I did not want to." He smiled faintly, the first real smile she had seen from him. "Then I guess I owe you my life." The warmth of his words sank deep into her chest, but it came with fear. She knew the truth would not stay buried forever. Later that week, Ethan's family arranged a formal dinner to celebrate his recovery. It was the first event he had attended outside his hospital room, and Claire was expected to appear by his side. She wore a simple navy dress, the one her sister had chosen months before the accident. As she entered the grand dining hall, whispers filled the air. "She is the wife," someone murmured. "The one who married him while he was in a coma." Claire kept her head high, smiling when Ethan offered his arm. Cameras flashed as he guided her to the center of the room. When he spoke, his voice was calm but commanding. "I would like to thank the woman who refused to leave me when I had nothing, not even consciousness. She reminded me that loyalty is not something you can buy." The applause that followed was warm, but the looks around her were sharp. Behind the smiles, Claire saw doubt. A few reporters leaned toward each other, whispering. One woman asked loudly, "And how did this love story begin?" Ethan turned to Claire as if expecting her to answer. For a heartbeat, she could not breathe. Then she smiled politely. "It began with a promise," she said. The evening passed in flashes of light and polite laughter, but when it was over, Ethan found her standing alone on the balcony overlooking the city. The night air was cool. The noise from inside faded into a distant hum. He stepped closer. "That was brave," he said softly. "But there is something you are not telling me. I can feel it." Claire turned to face him, her voice trembling. Some truths are better left until the heart is strong enough to hold them. He studied her, searching her face for an answer, but she looked away. The city lights reflected in her eyes, fragile and bright. Ethan nodded slowly. "Then I will wait," he said. "Because whatever it is, I already know you were the one who saved me." His words settled between them, delicate and dangerous. For the first time, Claire realized that love had already crossed the line she had sworn never to reach. The calm that followed the dinner did not last. Within days, the world outside their quiet routine began to close in. The press wanted interviews, the Montgomery board demanded meetings, and rumors spread faster than truth could catch them. Every headline carried Claire's name beside Ethan's, wrapped in speculation and scandal. One morning, Ethan's assistant brought in a folder filled with clippings. They say you married me for the money, Ethan said quietly as he turned the pages. That you used my coma to tie yourself to the family fortune. Claire felt her stomach twist. You know that is not true. I know, he said softly. But the world does not. That same evening, Ethan's mother arrived unannounced. Her expression was as cold as the marble floor beneath her heels. Ethan, you need to hear the truth, she said, her eyes fixed on Claire. Your marriage is a lie. She was never meant to be your wife. It was Lila, her sister. The air left Claire's lungs. Ethan stared at her, confusion and hurt flickering across his face. What is she talking about? Claire opened her mouth, but no words came. Her throat tightened, and tears burned her eyes. It was my father's decision, she finally managed. They said it was only to protect both families. I never meant to deceive you. Ethan's voice cracked. So everything, the vows, the nights you stayed by my bed, was all part of the lie? No, she said, stepping closer. That part was real. Every word, every moment, I swear it. But he turned away. I need time, he said quietly. I do not even know who I am to you anymore. When he left the room, the silence that followed was heavier than any she had known. Claire sank to her knees, the sound of the closing door echoing in her chest. The secret she had buried to protect him had become the blade that cut them apart. Outside, the rain began again, tapping against the glass like a cruel reminder some truths could heal, but others had to shatter everything before they could set it free. Days passed with no word from Ethan. He had moved out of the hospital and into his family's estate to continue therapy, leaving Claire behind with a silence that felt endless. Every morning she came to the hospital out of habit, sitting in the same chair beside the now empty bed. The scent of lilies had faded, but the memory of his voice lingered in the air. Then, one afternoon, Dr. Harris entered with a folder in his hand. Claire, he said gently, you should see this. Inside was a flash drive. The security system recorded your visits while Ethan was unconscious. He asked me to erase it months ago, but I could not bring myself to do it. Maybe it is time someone else saw the truth. That night, Claire sat alone in the chapel, laptop open, the glow from the screen flickering against the stained glass. The footage played hour after hour of her reading, adjusting his blanket, holding his hand, whispering words of hope into the darkness. It was proof of something pure, unspoken, and real. She wiped her tears and whispered, maybe he needs to see it too. The next day, the Montgomery family held a press conference to address the rumors. Cameras filled the marble hall, reporters murmuring as Ethan appeared beside his mother. His voice was steady, but his eyes seemed distant. Before I answer any questions, he said, there is something I need to show you. The lights dimmed. On the giant screen behind him appeared the video Claire, exhausted but steadfast, night after night beside his bed. The room fell silent. Every whisper died away. When the video ended, Ethan turned toward the crowd. That is the woman you called a liar, he said. That is the person who gave me back my life. He stepped away from the podium, his gaze finding Claire at the back of the hall. I do not care about contracts or names. I only care about truth, and the truth is I love her. The cameras flashed again, but this time it was not scandal they captured. It was redemption. Claire stood frozen as Ethan crossed the room, every step erasing the distance between them. When he reached her, he took her trembling hands and whispered, no more silence, Claire. Come home. The night after the press conference, the city lights shimmered like reflections of a new beginning. For the first time in months, Claire felt free to breathe. Ethan had broken every wall that had kept them apart. The world finally knew the truth, not the contract, not the arrangement, but the love that had grown between two people who never meant to find each other. A week later, the hospital chapel where she had once whispered her vows to a man who could not answer was filled again. This time, there were no lawyers, no papers, and no lies. The pews were lined with flowers instead of judgment, and soft music drifted through the air. Ethan stood waiting at the altar, healthy and whole. When Claire entered, the entire room seemed to quiet, as if the walls themselves remembered their story. He reached for her hand, his voice calm and sure. The first time you said I do, I was asleep. I never heard you. So today, let me say it back. Her eyes filled with tears as he slid a new ring onto her finger. It was simple, elegant, and perfectly fitted the opposite of the one that had once slipped loose on her hand. The audience held its breath as he whispered, No contracts, no conditions, no lies, just love. Claire smiled through her tears. And just us, she said softly. When the ceremony ended, sunlight broke through the stained glass, scattering warm color across their faces. Outside, the rain that had followed them for months had finally stopped. Ethan helped her down the steps, his fingers intertwined with hers. Reporters waited nearby, but for once, neither of them looked toward the cameras. They simply walked past, hand in hand, laughing quietly like two people who had survived the same storm. As they reached the garden, Ethan paused and turned to her. "You once told me love was like keeping a promise," he said. "So let us keep this one for the rest of our lives." Claire leaned against him, her voice steady and full of peace. "We already have." And with that, the story that began with duty ended with devotion, the kind that no contract could ever define.